So apparently today is the day where they decided to tear down the foundations of Western civilization in my house. At least that is what it sounds like from the cacophony of heavy machinery that I've been hearing all morning. So I instead decided to go to the park and take opportunity of this beautifully warm autumnal day to talk about a topic that I've been meaning to talk about in a park, and I thought I couldn't do it because the winter is coming and winter here is quite harsh. So today we will be talking about parks, cities, and the future of both. I initially went out to a park that was very near my house, and then I realized I was in a park that was very near my house and people already know the city where I live in. And I thought to myself, maybe this is a very stupid idea to dox yourself, so I got on the bus and I got to this beautiful major park of Kiel that any person could possibly go to. And it's really not revealing of my location at all. A concept that a lot of people find a bit counterintuitive is that cities are actually the greenest form of habitat that humans could possibly have. Living in the country, or especially on a farm, might seem like you're living the hippie life, the true life of growing and giving the environment something back, but a very important consideration to make is the consideration of space. People who live in cities live very efficiently. Their life spaces are stacked upon each other. We call them apartments. I live in one. Many things that are produced, even agricultural goods, are produced primarily on the outskirts of cities. So bringing stuff into the city, which creates carbon emissions because you have the big truck and the truck blasts out carbon into the air. All the goods that are being produced near the city are also consumed in the city. The truck only has to go one way to one supermarket or, a handful of supermarkets, and a lot of people go buy things at those supermarkets, and those supermarkets are within walking or at least bus driving distance. If you live out in a village, out in the boondocks, you will generally have most of the products that you could also get in a city, because we do live in the first world. But not only does the truck have to drive out farther from the city to deliver the goods to you, but you will also most likely not be in walking distance of your nearest supermarket. That means that you will get into your car and drive to the supermarket to buy shopping and then drive back, which is a lot of carbon emissions that could have been avoided if only you had lived in the city. Parks and green areas in the city are a very important asset to city building and city culture, and I think they are often underrepresented and undervalued for what they provide to the community. People like to feel connected to nature, even those who live in the forest of houses that is the city. They will walk their dogs here, they will have their barbecues here, they have a little slice of what makes country life special just in the middle of where all the people are. A lot of people who would describe themselves as country folk will lament a certain lack of community and a sense of being at home in cities. And that is something that can happen to you. Cities, though they are full of people, can be a very lonely place because everyone gets to choose who they hang out with, and if you don't actively seek out people to hang out with, you might not find anyone to hang out with. This is where I believe parks come in especially handy, because they do act as community spaces where people with similar interests will just meet up without having to pay for a class or become a member of some Facebook group that will bombard you with messages. Something that I believe will and should become a thing in the very near future is rooftop gardens on cities that are especially tall. A lot of science fiction and especially cyberpunk franchises like to create a sort of disparity between the cities by actually physically separating the cities into an upper and a lower city. And ironically enough, that is precisely what I want to do. You would essentially create a citywide park that rests on the rooftops of the tallest buildings. Now, this wouldn't be Hengsha, where it would be continuous. The different parks would be connected over walk bridges and not just span over the streets, though in some areas some building projects could make that happen, and it would certainly be quite interesting. I don't think many current skyscraper areas could be converted into this, though I do think this would make Manhattan very beautiful if we just decided to extend Central Park. But of course you would run into the zoning issue that most buildings would have to be roughly the same height, which they're not. Especially in the skyscraper business, they really like to go overboard with the tallest buildings possible. So that would be a bit of a trade-off. However, what you would be getting is extra commercial space. Commercial space is very valuable in cities because obviously there's a high density of people who would potentially want to buy the goods that you are offering, and thus it comes at a premium, especially because it is very limited. You will rarely find a supermarket in the 5th story of some random skyscraper, because that is not a place that attracts a lot of foot traffic. However, by creating this interconnected rooftop garden, you would be creating a space that people have a big incentive to go to. I mean, people go to parks just to amuse themselves. There's not really a lot of shops here, and you could potentially, in the layer directly underneath that rooftop garden, have some stores. This essentially doubles the availability of commercial space in the area where you have this garden. You will have commercial space on the street level, and you will have commercial space on the rooftop level. All of this in addition to relaxing foot traffic on the street a little bit, because those can be very crowded sometimes if you go to a major city. I'm also quite firm in my belief that a lot of people would choose to walk more if they didn't have to go through the disgusting city road where all the taxis and the buses and the people driving their disgusting cars stink everything up. I know that New York specifically has a big problem with food cart spaces. Most of the food carts are unlicensed because there's a lot of food carts in New York and they just don't have enough space to put them. The idea here obviously being that you put the food carts on the rooftop garden and everyone's happy. This creates more market competition, it's better for the consumer, it creates more tax revenue, it creates more small business owners. It's really just an all-round good deal. And because I love the future, we can also consider the ramifications of new metamaterials being introduced into the mix. I think if we were able to produce industrial scale graphene, that would make the whole rooftop garden situation even easier. And here's why. You could just continue building upward. You could just have taller skyscrapers than the rooftop garden level. You would just have to build a community space level that would technically be part of the rooftop garden, even if you don't have any plants in it, on the level where that rooftop garden is located. And then you could go further up and you could even have 2 layers of commercial space. Eventually we could build up this second layer of traffic with, I don't know, futuristic monorails and all that kind of shit, because eventually it'll get so crowded up there that people will want to have their own public transport for living on the rooftop garden. And then you introduce additional rooftop gardens and eventually you have solar collectors on top that shine light down to the original layer of rooftop. I have thought this through a lot, and I have thought this through a lot more than I should have, possibly. I do think that this is specifically something for new cities like Lagos, which of course isn't a new city as in it has been founded recently, but it is experiencing a big boom in construction as Nigeria as a nation develops further and comes into the industrialized world, which might still take a while, but it will happen. I can imagine Americans just being a bit too boneheaded with their whole skyscraper culture, which, to be honest, skyscrapers can be very beautiful, these huge jungles of steel, metal and glass. But I don't think many Americans are likely to adopt this kind of policy because it would interfere with their building codes, and specifically with the building codes of large corporations. And if there's one thing Americans don't like, it's taking rights away from large corporations. In Europe, we probably also wouldn't do it because we just don't have that many skyscrapers. It's pointless to do this here. I mean, you could put a rooftop garden on like, this is as high as we go, essentially. You could do that potentially, but that would throw a lot of shade on the streets below. Anyway, thank you very much for watching this short and also fairly experimental video. I've never sort of filmed outside before. I feel like one of those LA vlogger cunts who constantly... It's really quite weird, though people don't look at you as much as I thought they would when I started doing this. Obviously, the big announcement that is the real reason why all of you clicked on this video is that I do now have a merchandise store. I know it's been a long time in the making. Finally, it will launch today. I have 2 designs to start with, both of which are amazing. I will put them in on screen here, the first one, and then also here, the second one. You should get both of them. I basically just clicked on everything that you could click on. You can get mugs and t-shirts and sweaters and cell phone cases, and you can get it imprinted on the souls of homeless people that you can buy in jars for your witchcraft experiment. Consider supporting me on Patreon for very cool rewards, especially on the Discord server. Discord server already knows that I won't be filming with the bookcase behind me today. I should have brought the wooden play button though. That would have been quite fascinating. Just hide it somewhere in the frame. Or maybe I did. In that spirit, I appreciate all of you. This is very backlit and horrible when I'm going to end it like this because I do not know what I am doing and I want you to know that I'm not doing. Go to your local park, support your local parks, and see you around, cunts.